Yep. How's it going? Ooh, I actually double checking with the surname. It's fine. People can enjoy it. How do I pronounce the surname again? Just to make sure I don't butcher it.
Giles, thanks for asking.
Giles.
Everybody gets it wrong.
Giles. No worries. So how's it going, everyone? Before you, welcome to Indianapolis Radio. We've been fortunate to be joined by Laura Giles. She is the host of It's Not You, It's Me podcast. So she's a podcaster as well, first and foremost. And she's also a trauma therapist and a holistic therapist with over 20 years of experience. So she obviously has a lot of knowledge and wisdom to share in regards to trauma, our human psyche, and a lot of the subconscious battles that we face as individuals. And so I'd like to thank you, Laura, for coming onto the podcast. And why did you not start by telling us about yourself? When did your passion for understanding the human psyche and a lot of these things begin?
Thank you for having me. I appreciate being here. So my passion for this, I think with all of us, it all starts before we even aware that we're on a journey.
Hmm.
All these little things happen step by step by step, and then it's like, wow, we're here. And mine started in childhood, and I grew up in a very close-knit neighborhood that was just it was just bliss, honestly. Every single day was beautiful. You didn't have anything to do but be a kid. Go outside, enjoy nature, jump rope, ride bikes, and catch frogs and things like that. And it really was quite idyllic. It's like this bubble of a time capsule of beauty and wonder. And as I grew up and it wasn't like that, I was just like, why? Why can't it be like that everywhere, always? Where is this warm heart connection with not just your family, but the people who live around you? What happened to this community? And I think that really planted a seed in me to create that everywhere that I go. I was doing that and I didn't even know that I was doing it, honestly. And then eventually that blossomed into working as a therapist because I stumbled into a psychology class thinking, okay, here's an easy A. I had zero interest in psychology, none at all. And it was like, wow, people really make sense. There is a reason why some people aren't real nice, and it was just fascinating. And so it just grew from there. And then, class after class and event after event until that was just my life. And it's been wonderful, really, because I think people are so interesting. Like all of nature, we're part of nature. All of it's just fascinating. And I love the way that it all intersects with each other. So that's how
Wow.
I got here.
Um, Sheesh, it sounds way smooth, way more smoother than I can. I don't know how to imagine it to be, but the way you described it, it's like it was like a gracefully moved into everything. When you hear some of the journeys, there's a lot of twists, turns, chops, cuts, and everything. But the way you described it was really neat. I was like, man, that sounds like it's pretty awesome. And so I guess I was gonna ask because you mentioned passion, obviously, and I get that's a big thing behind a lot of why people do things, but you tend to notice that passion is sometimes misguided, misinterpreted, and even misused for that matter. So I guess I was going to ask one, why is passion important to us as individuals? And you having kind of studied people, what is the difference between passion and compulsion? Just erratic behavior for the sake of yeah. I don't know if that makes sense, but there's a lot of passion that's sometimes not actually passion. It's just kind of us being, from what I've learned for myself, being foolish. So yeah, what's the difference between those two in your opinion?
What a great question. So I think passion is something that warms the heart and pulls us forward, where compulsion is something that drives us, maybe like you were saying, in unhealthy ways. Like we're maybe trying to escape something, or yeah, probably escape something like, uh, addiction is a compulsion. I'm compulsively using a substance, or I'm compulsively having sex, or something like that,
Mhm.
because I'm trying to escape what's going on inside. Where I think passion, like if I have a passion for art, then that's not really an escape. That's a desire to create, and that's a desire to pull and to connect and to share something. So I think, yeah, it's a very similar energy, but one is healthy and the other one's not. And I think if you can realize which is which, then maybe you can use them more in ways that help.
And in terms of you, obviously mentioned your childhood, subconsciously you already kind of following your passion. So kind of different from most people, but a lot of us, we go through our lives not really knowing what our passion is. So is there a certain way that one, obviously you mentioned the heart being the center, but that kind of gets a bit esoteric or maybe metaphysical for some people, but the process of cultivating, understanding what your passion was, how was that for you from a practical standpoint? How did you know that, okay, this really is something I want to do for the tenure of my life, however long it goes on?
Well, I think in order for you to have passion, and I think this is the reason why a lot of people don't feel like they have one, is that you have to have safety.
Hmm.
If you don't have safety, then you're going to be driven by fear. And that's where that escape comes from. And I did grow up in a safe household. I grew up in a pretty safe environment. I was safe with myself because I had the skills to do whatever I needed to do. Like the world's not safe, but I can handle myself, you know?
Hmm.
So it wasn't like I'm looking over my shoulder all the time. So when I'm guided by my heart, it's not like I'm running after things or running from things. It's just a space of being in the moment and listening. I really have never had any plans in my life, to be honest. People talk about what's your 5-year plan. I remember the first time somebody asked me that, I was like, I have no idea. What are you talking about? And I've never lived my life that way. It's just like, what am I doing right now? And in doing that, what am I doing right now? Where do I want to be right now? How does this feel? That's really led me to my passion. So when I was younger, I worked as a belly dancer. And again, not something I ever would have planned ever in life. There was so much about that I would have just been like, that is a flat no. Because I was coming into that as a tomboy. I'm like, "Oh, I'm not going to do that." That was just not me at all. But it just felt so wonderful. So back up a little context. I was a bodybuilder before that. Now that felt like
Wow.
good. My body's really strong and yeah, that felt really good. But I was in a bunch of car accidents, like 3 car accidents back to
Wow.
back. And I couldn't do it anymore, but I just really loved the physicality of it. And I was like, okay, what can I do that's physical, but yet gentle enough on my body that I'm not injuring myself? So that's how I ended up in belly dance. I'm like, okay, I can do this. I'm not hurting anything, but it all came with these shiny things and moving and all of this being up on stage. And I'm just like, ah, but it just really felt good to be there. It felt good to be in the company of women who were beautiful, who were semi naked. That was just like, wow, you guys are confident. And and then, so I danced for Arabs, and that was a totally different thing because that was that family comfort community that I was talking about from childhood. So it felt really good to be there. And that's what I mean by being heart led. It just felt really good. There was nothing like I have to do this about it. There was nothing to prove. It was just, I'm here, you're here, let's share this moment, this music. And so my whole life has just kind of flown that way. And then when I fell into the psychology piece, it was the same thing. It it was just it feels good to be here in an authentic space with people. I really loved how they showed up. I loved how I showed up. I loved the way that we related to each other and helped each other and we're humans together. And that's always been really, really wonderful.
Um, yeah, excellent storyteller. Uh, a lot of quite the intense life you've lived. Just hearing, a gist of it only, not even the entirety of it. So I guess I have to ask, what is 20 years in the field of treating people with mental health issues been like? Because you go in and you see the whole array of problems people have, and some are very extreme, and it's not everyone's cup of tea. I've interviewed, rape counselors, people who work with, people who are about to die and everything, and so that's not your everyday type of thing. Your mind, at a certain point in time, it's like, what the hell? I'm just wondering, what has 20 years just dealing with different people, different stories, different outcomes, different everything? How's that been? It's just from your lens.
I have loved every minute of it. And I know it's not everybody's cup of tea because it goes in really dark places
Mhm.
sometimes. I mean, you have to witness people's truth. And a
Mm.
lot of people have had really, really hard walks. And I think, as the therapist, you're the one that's holding the ground steady for them. And you have to have that. But like I said, the first time that I was talking to somebody in that capacity, there was just so much truth and vulnerability and honesty in them And that was so appealing. And I really love that about people who are seeking help because it's the mask comes off. You can't go looking for help with this mask on, oh, I'm such a tough guy. I have no problems and get help. You're not going to get help that way. You've got to come to it naked or else it's just
Mm,
really not going to work. And that nature in its authenticity is always appealing to me. You know, whether it's
mm,
the tree that's blossoming or anything that's just coming fresh out of the ground or even if it's something that's dying, if it's true, it's beautiful. And so that is why I have really loved the work. It's I feel the respect of sharing this space and this honesty with people. I love them allowing me to be part of their journey. And whether, even if it's somebody dying, that's okay, because it is life and it teaches me as much as I give, 100%.
mm. Wow. That was a bit of a quite poetic, actually. It's interesting. I get, you have a strong connection to nature, which I'll actually touch on later on. And I guess I was going to say, how's the understanding of yourself shifted through working with others? You often learn more. Yes, you're the therapist, but your client, or I guess your patient more than anything, they are actually your teacher in some way. I would
Oh, for
assume,
sure.
I would assume, I don't know, I'm not in the field. I don't know, not my space, but I was going to ask, how have you seen your own understanding of your own inner psyche, your own inner being? How has that kind of shifted throughout this time that you've been doing this?
Well, I think we're all mirrors for each other, not again just humans, but the plants, the animals, the seasons, everything is reflected in everything else. And
Hmm.
if you're paying attention, everything has to be a teacher for you. So I often will hear somebody say something, I'd be like, "Oh, was that my thought?" Because it is my thought. Or they'll say something and I'll be like, "Oh, I really meant that." And even it could be 180 degrees from what I just said, but because they're mirrors for me, it's always like a self-check. And I think that self-reflection is always something that we need to be doing if we want to be alive, if we
Hmm.
want to be conscious beings. Because what we thought yesterday might not be what we're thinking today. Every day is different. One constant is change. So you got to be paying attention, and other people will show you who you are if you look.
And I was going to ask, maybe this is a bit outside of the topic itself, but I notice a lot of the people with native roots have a unique connection to nature. So I was going to ask if you have any ancestral ties to any natives or no?
Yes.
Because
Yes. So
I
my
get that
mother,
vibe. I get that, no, like a strong, like wow, like
yeah.
I guess like ancient wisdom. And I was like, yeah, the Native Americans have such a, if you look at the ancient teachings that are passed on, because I know it's a lineage thing, a lot of the knowledge is like passed down. Similarly here in African culture, a bit different, but the way you speak, oh man, it was like 100% coming out. I was like, so I don't know. Is that something that strongly influenced kind of your spiritual development in a way, your ability to tune into nature and knowing that, the creator is in the essence of the creator is in everything. Is that something that kind of resonates with you? Is that a principle or thought process that maybe you've come across?
Yeah, so my mother is indigenous, and so I had that influence my whole life, obviously. But I grew up in the West, so that was not in my environment. So outside of my household, that didn't really exist. But I did have an experience probably 10 years ago, 15 years ago now, where I went to an indigenous community, and that's when it just blew up because it's one thing to have it inside of you. It's one thing to have it kind of like in a microcosm, but when you're in an environment where everything is aware of itself and aware of the connection, it's just totally different. There's a rhythm to life that's so easy and so sensuous for sure, but I don't know that I don't think I have words to really describe that. It's respectful, it's beautiful, it's connected, it's infinite, and every single day there was just so magnificent, even though I was in like really poor place and
Hmm.
people had nothing and none of that mattered at all. We just focused so much on the wrong things.
Incredible. Yeah, you tend to get those perspective shifts when you visit people that have learned to find gratitude in the smallest of things. And
Yeah.
I was going to ask in terms of trauma and psychological themes, I guess in the New Age community, for the most part, shadow work is a big thing and people, it's a topic of discussion. Obviously, you have much more experience in understanding what real shadow work looks like. So I was going to ask you, what is shadow work and how does trauma affect our body and our cognitive function?
So shadow work was a term, I believe it was created by Carl Jung,
Hmm.
and his definition is the things that we can't see. And
Hmm.
100%, the things that we can't see are driving the boat, and we don't even know that it's there. So trauma really is the expression of that. When you have all these things that happen to you, and it doesn't even have to be a big thing. I have a lot of clients. I'm fortunate to be in the first world. We have first world problems. And a lot of people grow up and they think, I had a good childhood. I had everything that I needed. I don't have any trauma, but they're carrying loads of trauma. So it doesn't have to be, I was beaten. My parents put cigarettes out on me. I was raped. It doesn't
Mm,
have to be that. Obviously, that stuff is traumatic. But when
mm,
you're ignored, when you're neglected, when you feel abandoned, those things create these programs in our body too that help us to live in maladaptive ways. So
mm,
if I'm running around here thinking that I'm stupid, nobody cares for me, um, I have to have this in order to be accepted, I'm going to play that out every
mm,
single day. And I'm going to keep attracting these things that validate those beliefs. And so when I'm talking about shadow work and trauma work, what I'm talking about is getting to the root of that, feeling that in your body, getting your mind and body and spirit in alignment so that that lifts and then the truth comes out, which is that, we're all beautiful, we're all okay, just the way that we are. And
mm,
when we're in that space, that's when that freeing and that authenticity and all of this can open up so we can feel connected. Because when we're in a space of trauma and our shadow is leading, we don't feel that. It's like I'm hiding because I don't want you to see the ugliness that I am. So there's no way that you can see me.
mm. Wow. And how have you faced your own trauma, if I can ask, whatever you're, I guess, willing to share in that sense?
It has been, I do a lot of body work.
Mm,
In the work that I do, I work through the body somatically, and most of my stuff has come out somatically. So I'm a very
mm,
kinesthetic person. So we all have a lead processing system. We're either visual, auditory, or kinesthetic. I'm kinesthetic. So touch is real important to me. I like to feel the earth. I like to
mm,
dance. I like to do things involving with my body. And that's kind of the way that I get it out. I have rituals that I do that kind of like now's the time. So it's not necessarily that I'll wait for a trigger, but it's like if it's time for purification, we'll do it now. Whatever's in, let's get it out.
mhm,
It's kind of like cleaning your house.
mhm,
You don't wait until it's a cesspool to clean it. You clean it regularly, hopefully. So that's kind of how it's happened mostly, but sometimes it comes out spontaneously. And just because I know what I'm looking at, I know how to process it. And I can do that as it happens.
yeah. Yeah, no, I know kinesthetically. So things like it's a TRS. That's the one where you do certain movements. I did one, two sets, three sessions of it actually. It was wild, just letting the body like contort and do all sorts of things. Like,
Yeah.
did not know my body was wanting to do that. And so
Yes.
that's actually when it became. I actually read an interesting book. I don't know if I have it with me. It's called Your Body Speaks Your Mind, and this lady describes how all sorts of diseases and ailments, what they're associated with, not necessarily 100% medicine, like medically valid, but from her understanding of patients, basically asking questions about their experience of their background, she was able to correlate like a map of all sorts of things, diseases that would happen, headaches, migraines, and what they were
Yeah.
associated with. And I was like, wow, if this stuff is true, then this is mind blowing how that, that mind body connection is so inseparable, even though we tend to kind of forget about it in our daily lives because they're so stressful anyway. But it's interesting that you mentioned that aspect being very, very important to you. And so I did want to ask, well, how can people reach out to you and what are your sessions typically like? How do you usually handle, or do you have a specific way for handling different patients with different problems?
Well, so it's a collaboration. It depends on what they want to do. If they have one problem and you just want to knock out that thing, say, I'm stuck. This is, a hurdle I can't get past. I can't make more than this much money. I can't,
Mm,
whatever it is. you know, and that could be a one and done thing, or maybe 3 sessions. It depends on what it is. You never know until you start digging, because sometimes it can look like it's a barren field with one thing in it, and then it's not. It's like a deep well. So it really just depends on how deep a person wants to go. So like if you want a whole life overhaul, then we can work more deeply and more um, intensely. But if you just have a one and done type problem, I do those too. And I have lots of different techniques. So it's not one size fits all, but most of it is dealing with the stuff that we don't know. So most of it's not going to be talking. The
Mm,
stuff, if you can talk about it, it's not shadow work.
mm,
So
wow.
I'm going into your body, I'm going into your metaphors, I'm going into your dreams, I'm going into symbols, because a symbol is the language of spirit. That's what's true. Your body doesn't lie. So if you're telling me, oh, this thing doesn't bother me anymore, meanwhile you're breathing really heavy, I'm gonna listen to
Mhm,
your body. There's something there. And once you get it out, and once you feel what it is, then typically it's done speaking to you. It just wants to be seen. It just wants to be heard. It's like people, you give them the space to do that, and we're good. I don't have to do this anymore. And then you can just let it go. It really is that easy. People are afraid of it. They're afraid, okay, if I open these gates, I'm just going to feel too much and it's going to destroy
mm.
me. It doesn't. It doesn't. It goes away.
No, you definitely have a voice of compassion and comfort. I know you obviously have a strong masculine component, being physically athletic, strong, and I get that sense from you too. You're tough as nails, but the way you speak and conduct, like just the way it brings a certain amount of ease. And I think a lot of us, when we go into spaces of vulnerability, it's the embarrassment that we go through. You don't want to be embarrassed, but the way you speak, I think it works in your favor. I feel like it negates that feeling of embarrassment and makes people feel like, okay, what I'm thinking, everything is accepted no matter what it is. So guess it's a
And I
gift
think
that
it's
you
true. We're everything. Everything is us. And we recently did a girls' day where we went to the spa. And most of the people who went had never been into a spa where there's naked people everywhere. And and it was really interesting afterwards, because when we were talking, they said, this is so freeing, it's so natural. And it was so sensuous to be around all these bodies. There was nothing sexual about it. And you had, fit ones and not fit ones, and old ones and young ones. And it's just life.
yeah,
So
no.
I don't know why we get so, I don't know, judgy, uncomfortable. It's life.
I think, I mean, I guess I can't really answer for everyone, but I get the sense that it's society, our society in which we have moderated behaviors and perspectives and things like that. It's just become something that's, it's a natural way of coping and maintaining sobriety. We consider that. And so I remember, because it's funny, a friend of mine pulled a horrible joke on me back when I was in uni. He said, "You wanted to go sell ice cream on a beach." Never forget this. And I actually really forgot about this story. Sorry, Jack, I got to expose you. But yeah, we went to it, and so we get to this beach, and I'm like, dude, just also naked people everywhere. I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, what are you doing? Like, at first, and I won't even lie, it took a good 30 minutes for me to just disassociate physicality and everything and
Yeah.
just having a conversation. It took a while, because what I realized is there was no consciousness of like lust or perversion there or whatever stuff that, society, programming that we have. It was not present. People were having a genuinely good time. And that was the first time I actually started to contemplate that maybe is sometimes an over restriction of things that makes you overthink things. Like overthinking is a result of not actually facing thoughts head on or situations head
Yeah.
on. And so as much as uncomfortable as that situation was, it brought me to a place of laughter and just saying, okay, you know what? F it, whatever. Life life goes on, and people, can do whatever you want, I mean, as long as, I guess, like you mentioned, it's the state of your consciousness, and more importantly, I guess your heart, where your heart's at, because there are people there that are, miserable and stuff like that. You can pick up on vibes quite quickly.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I was gonna ask, do you work with any clients outside of the US? Just in case
Um,
someone, maybe, I mean, I'm here in South Africa, so perhaps maybe, I don't know, hopefully someone who tunes in, may actually want to reach out to you, and obviously circumstantially it's hard to do anything in person. So is there anything that you do currently that like maybe online Zoom calls with people from other places in the world, or you're mainly concentrated in your local demographic?
It is mainly the United States, and I would talk to anybody anywhere. And I also do sacred travel. So we travel to different places around the world and do retreats. So all this stuff that I'm talking about can be done in, they call it milieu, which means in like a real life environment, which that's what the retreat type environment is. So we
Mhm.
get together, people are strangers usually,
Mhm.
and we live all the things that I've been talking about because it's very hard to do that in an hour session. You know,
Mhm.
if you want to connect to nature, you have to be in nature. And if
Mhm.
you want to learn how to connect with people, you have to be with people. And
Mhm.
it's actually pretty easy because it flows that way anyway. And the main ingredient to that is safety. So when people feel safe, then that's just our baseline. We go there, it's a beautiful experience. And then once we have that, then we can do extra stuff and kind of amplify all of that and feel what it's like to live naturally without all the barriers, without all the shadow stuff
Mhm.
leading the way. So that's my favorite way to work. And we go all over the world for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you for saying that. And obviously, last question. I know you're busy and stuff. So, what is your advice for the audience tuning in today? Words of wisdom. There we go.
My thing for everybody is just to be yourself. And I know that's something that we always say, oh, be yourself. But I mean, like, really, your true self, your big self, your giant God self. I mean, dare to do that. Imagine what your life could be if you just did 1/10 of that, how juicy it could be. So my challenge to everybody is to dare to have some of that.
No, thank you so much, Laura. It's really been good having you on. Obviously, it'd be also great to have you on at a later stage, maybe get to know you more and what you do. You seem like quite the adventurer, and you definitely have a whole different many dimensions to your character, not character, but yourself, really, that I think people would find quite interesting and definitely could learn from. So I just wanted to say thank you for coming on. I hope you had a good time. I hope someone takes something from this podcast. And again, wishing you all the best moving forward as you meet new clients, as you extend your podcast as well. I'll put the link in the description and on the video as well, so that you guys can go check it out. There's actually a lot of good stuff there. And yeah, no, thank you. Thank you, Laura. It's truly appreciated.
Awesome. It's a pleasure.